The silent goodbye that shatters you. Imagine this. You send a message. Maybe it's something simple. Hey, how was your day? You see the little delivered check mark. Hours pass, then days, and suddenly silence becomes louder than words. No explanation, no closure, just nothing. It's called ghosting. And the truth is, it cuts deeper than most people admit. Because ghosting isn't just rejection. It feels like you've been erased. Why does it hurt so much? Because our brains crave certainty. When someone disappears without a word, it leaves an open loop, an unanswered question, and that emptiness triggers anxiety, self-doubt, even obsession. You start wondering, what did I do wrong? Was I not enough? Did they ever care at all? But here's the thing. What if ghosting is not about you at all? What if the reason is far more psychological and far less personal than you think? Stay with me, because in this video, we're going to unpack the real reason people ghost you, the Stoic mindset that can set you free, and the exact steps to regain your confidence without falling into the endless spiral of overthinking. If you've ever been ghosted, this will change how you see it forever. Why ghosting feels like an emotional ambush. Ghosting doesn't just sting, it feels like a betrayal of basic human decency. One moment, you're laughing at shared jokes, exchanging good morning texts, feeling that connection grows stronger. And then, nothing. No warning, no explanation. Just a sudden disappearance that feels like being left in a dark room without a door. Why does it hurt so much? Because ghosting violates one of our deepest psychological needs, closure. Humans are wired to seek patterns and reasons. When someone exits your life without a word, your mind scrambles for an explanation. And when it can't find one, it starts making one, usually against you. I must have said something wrong. Maybe I wasn't interesting enough. What if I'm just not lovable? This is where the real damage happens. Not from their silence, but from the story you start telling yourself. That story eats at your self-worth, your confidence, and your ability to trust again. But here's something most people don't realize. Ghosting is rarely about you. It's almost always about them. Their fear, their inability to handle discomfort, their lack of emotional maturity. Yet, in the absence of truth, we take the blame. And this is exactly where Stoic philosophy comes in. Because as Epictetus said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. We can't stop people from ghosting us, but we can control the meaning we attach to it. In this video, you'll learn how to reframe ghosting, how to protect your mental peace, and why ghosting says more about them than it ever will about you. Why does it feel so personal? When someone ghosts you, it doesn't just feel like rejection. It feels like erasure. One day, you existed in their world. You mattered. And then suddenly, you're gone, as if you never meant anything at all. That emotional whiplash is brutal. Why does this cut so deep? Because ghosting hijacks one of the most primal fears in the human brain, the fear of abandonment. From birth, we are wired to seek connection for survival. When those bonds break without reason, your nervous system interprets it as danger. That's why your chest feels tight, your stomach churns, your mind races. It's not weakness, it's biology. And here's the real kicker. The absence of explanation creates a void, and your brain hates voids. It rushes to fill it, usually with self-blame. Was it something I said? Something I did? Was I not enough? Every unanswered question feels like a mirror reflecting your deepest insecurities. But here's the truth no one tells you. Ghosting feels personal because your ego is deeply invested in being seen, heard, and validated. When someone disappears, it threatens that identity. Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic philosopher, once said, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed." Easier said than done, right? But what he meant is this. People's actions are a reflection of their own character, not your worth. When someone ghosts you, they're revealing their inability to communicate, to face discomfort, to be honest, not your failure as a human being. The moment you internalize this truth, the power shifts. You're no longer a victim of someone's silence. You're an observer of their weakness. And that shift, It's liberating. What Marcus Aurelius would say. Imagine sitting across from Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, as you pour your heart out about being ghosted. You'd expect him to empathize with your pain, but his response might surprise you. Marcus would calmly remind you, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. He wouldn't ask why they ghosted you. He wouldn't encourage you to chase answers or closure. Instead, he'd tell you to shift your focus inward, because your suffering doesn't come from their silence. It comes from your interpretation of their silence. Ghosting feels unbearable because we attach meaning to it. They vanish because I wasn't enough. Something about me pushed them away. But Stoicism teaches us this truth. Events themselves are neutral. Our judgments give them power. Marcus would tell you to remove the story you've built around their absence and see it for what it is. A person made a choice you can't control. Their choice says more about them than it does about you. He'd likely remind you of another Stoic principle. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. If ghosting violates integrity and truth, then why would you want someone in your life who lacks those virtues? Ghosting reveals a misalignment of character, and for a Stoic, that's a gift. It frees you from an unworthy bond. Here's the Stoic secret. When you stop trying to control what others do, you reclaim control over yourself. And that's where peace lives, not in their reply, but in your response. The dark truth about human nature. If we peel back the layers of ghosting, what do we find? A raw, uncomfortable truth about human nature. We avoid pain at all costs, even if it means creating more of it for someone else. Think about it. Ghosting isn't always about you. It's often about them. People ghost because they fear confrontation. They ghost because they can't handle guilt or discomfort. They ghost because silence feels easier than honesty. This is not new. Ancient Stoics like Epictetus spoke about the weakness of those who lack self-mastery. When a person ghosts you, what they are really showing is their inability to deal with their own emotions, their fear of being uncomfortable, their escape from responsibility. Here's the dark twist. Most people act out of self-preservation, not malice. Ghosting is an act of avoidance, not an act of attack. But when you're on the receiving end, it feels like betrayal because you live in a world that craves closure, certainty, and validation. Human nature is driven by two primal forces. Pleasure-seeking, we move toward what feels good. Pain avoidance, we run from what feels hard. Ghosting is simply pain avoidance in action. They choose their comfort over your clarity. And yes, it's selfish. But here's where you regain power. When you understand this truth, you stop personalizing their behavior. You stop thinking, I wasn't good enough, and start realizing they weren't strong enough. The Stoics would say this: fault lies not in the world, but in our expectations of it. Expecting everyone to communicate with honesty in a world built on avoidance will only set you up for suffering. The moment you accept this reality, that most people are not equipped to handle difficult conversations, you liberate yourself. Because ghosting, at its core, isn't about you at all. The hidden patterns that lead to ghosting. Ghosting rarely happens out of nowhere. There are patterns, subtle signals, that most of us ignore until it's too late. When you understand these patterns, you start to see the truth long before the silence arrives. Here's what the hidden patterns look like. Number 1. Inconsistent energy. One day, they're excited, the next they're distant. They respond quickly for a week, then suddenly take hours or days. This inconsistency isn't random. It's the early sign of emotional withdrawal. Number 2. Avoidance of depth. If every conversation stays on the surface, fun, casual, light, but never goes deeper, that's a sign. Why? Because depth creates obligation. And people who ghost don't want that. They keep things vague, so disappearing feels easier. Number 3. Future talk disappears. At first, they might say things like, we should hang out again, or next month will. Then those phrases vanish. They stop talking about tomorrow because they've already decided there isn't one. Number 4. Increased excuses. Sorry, I've been busy. Work is crazy right now. At first, these seem harmless. But when excuses become the norm instead of the exception, you're being slowly phased out. Number 5. Energy shift in communication. Notice this one carefully. They stop initiating. They stop asking questions. Their replies shrink. The emotional investment is drying up and silence is coming. Why do these patterns matter? Because ghosting doesn't begin with the act. It begins with withdrawal. And most people sense it but cling harder, hoping to pull the other person back. That clinginess actually accelerates the exit because it adds pressure they were already running from. The Stoics would remind us of this. Observe without attachment. Notice the patterns, but don't try to control them. Trying to hold someone who's already halfway out the door only guarantees pain. Here's the truth. Ghosting thrives in spaces where boundaries are weak and expectations are unspoken. If you see these patterns early, you can step back gracefully before you become collateral damage to someone else's avoidance. When ghosting has nothing to do with you, here's the hardest truth to accept. Most of the time, ghosting isn't about you. It's about them. You probably replayed every conversation in your head, wondering, what did I say wrong? Was it something I did? But here's the reality. People ghost because of their inability to face discomfort, not because you failed. Let's break this down. Number 1, the self-preservation instinct. Humans are wired to avoid pain, physical pain, emotional pain, and yes, even awkward conversations. Ending something directly requires courage, honesty, and confrontation. Most people don't want to deal with the discomfort of saying, I'm not interested anymore. It feels easier for them to disappear. Think about it. Ghosting gives them a quick escape with zero accountability. No arguments. No tears. No guilt trip. They think, if I fade away, the problem fades with me. Number 2, fear of confrontation. The fear of being the bad guy drives a lot of ghosting behavior. People hate feeling responsible for someone else's pain. So they convince themselves that silence is kinder than telling the truth, even though it's not. It's an illusion of kindness to protect their self-image. Number 3, emotional immaturity. Let's be honest. Ghosting is often a sign of emotional immaturity. A person who values honesty, accountability, and respect will tell you the truth, even if it hurts. But those who ghost, they lack the tools to handle discomfort. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, when someone is properly grounded in life, they should not have to look outside themselves for approval. In other words, other people's avoidance is not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their character. Number why this perspective matters. When you take ghosting personally, you give away your power. But when you understand this truth, that their silence is about them, not you, you reclaim your peace. The next time someone disappears, remember this. It's not a rejection of you. It's a revelation of them. The psychological framework behind ghosting. To truly understand why ghosting happens, we need to look beneath the surface, into the psychology of human behavior. Ghosting isn't random. It's a pattern deeply rooted in attachment styles, ego defense mechanisms, and social conditioning. 1. Attachment styles, the silent blueprint. Your attachment style, the way you form bonds, shapes how you enter and exit relationships. Psychologists identify 4 main styles: secure, comfortable with closeness and communication, rarely ghosts, anxious, fears abandonment, often overanalyzes when ghosted, avoidant, fears intimacy and discomfort, prime candidates for ghosting, disorganized, swings between neediness and avoidance, may ghost impulsively. Most people who ghost lean toward avoidant tendencies. They want connection, but the moment it feels overwhelming or emotionally demanding, they run. Ghosting becomes a coping strategy to maintain emotional distance. 2. Ego defense mechanisms, protecting the self-image. The ego hates discomfort. When faced with a situation that threatens self-esteem, like admitting they're not interested, it deploys defense mechanisms. Ghosting is a classic case of avoidance and denial. Avoidance. If I don't respond, the problem doesn't exist. Denial. They'll understand eventually. This is about preserving their sense of being a good person. They'd rather vanish than risk being seen as cruel. 3. Social conditioning, the modern ghost town. Our culture has normalized ghosting through technology. Think about it. Unlike 20 years ago, disappearing today is just a tap away. Unmatch, unfollow, block. No confrontation, no closure. The rise of instant gratification has made people more disposable. Apps encourage a next best option mentality. If someone doesn't feel instant sparks, they don't talk about it. They just vanish and swipe again. The Stoic insight. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When someone does you wrong, consider why they did it. Once you understand, you will pity them instead of hate them." Ghosting, at its core, is a failure of courage and maturity. It says nothing about your worth and everything about their inability to face discomfort. So, the next time someone ghosts you, don't spiral into self-blame. Recognize the psychological script they're following. And remember, you deserve someone who chooses conversation over disappearance. How to respond without losing your power. Mindset shifts to stay calm and maintain dignity. When you realize you've been ghosted, the first instinct is usually panic or anger. You want answers. You want closure. You want to know what went wrong. But here's the truth. Chasing closure from someone who doesn't value communication will only drain your power. So what's the alternative? You shift your mindset. You reclaim your energy. You respond, not to them, but to yourself with strength. 1. Accept the silence. Don't fight it. When someone ghosts you, they've already told you everything you need to know, not through words, but through their actions. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, if you are pained by external things, it is not they that disturb you, but your judgment about them. Your pain doesn't come from their silence. It comes from a story you're telling yourself about why they disappeared. Change the story. 2. Respond with grace, not emotion. If you feel compelled to send a message, make it short, neutral, and dignified. Hey, I noticed you've been distant. No worries, wishing you the best. Why? Because it signals confidence. It closes the loop on your terms, not theirs. You don't argue. You don't beg. You leave the door open, but you never sit by it. 3. Shift from rejection to redirection. Instead of obsessing over why didn't they choose me, ask, why would I want someone who chooses avoidance over honesty? Ghosting is rejection, yes, but rejection is redirection. Every time someone exits your life without explanation, they're creating space for someone who values you enough to stay. 4. Reinforce your inner frame. People who ghost thrive on your uncertainty. Don't give them that power. Repeat this mantra. Their silence is not my problem. My response defines me. Walk away with dignity, because the person who respects themselves always wins. The Stoic lens. Seneca said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Ghosting is what happens. Staying calm, centered, and self-respecting. That's your power. Next, we'll dive into the final part. How to build ghost-proof relationships. Turning ghosting into growth. Let's know the practical steps to reframe pain into strength. Being ghosted can feel like a wound that never fully heals, but it doesn't have to define you. In fact, it can become a catalyst for growth, self-awareness, and empowerment. 1. Reframe the narrative. Instead of asking, "Why did they leave me?" ask, "What can I learn about myself from this?" Ghosting is a mirror. It reflects not your worth, but your boundaries, patterns, and expectations. Each experience teaches you who to trust, how to communicate, and when to step away. 2. Build emotional resilience. Use this moment to strengthen your emotional armor. Practice these Stoic exercises, daily reflection, journal about your reactions without judgment. Pause before reacting. When you feel hurt, breathe, observe, and respond intentionally. Focus on control. Concentrate only on what's within your control, your thoughts, words, and actions. Over time, ghosting will lose its sting because your inner peace will no longer depend on others. 3. Redefine relationship standards. Ghosting exposes what you will and won't tolerate. Use it to define your non-negotiables. Honesty and communication are essential. Emotional availability is required. Mutual respect is expected. By clarifying your standards, you naturally attract people who meet them and repel those who don't. 4. Transform pain into empowerment. Every time you feel the sting of being ignored, ask yourself, how can this experience make me stronger, wiser, and more self-reliant? The person who ghosts you is not taking power from you. They're giving you a gift of clarity. You see who aligns with your life and who doesn't. You learn to walk away without self-blame. You become untouchable emotionally. 5. Embrace solitude and self-discovery. Ghosting forces introspection. Use the space to invest in yourself, your hobbies, your growth, your passions. As Marcus Aurelius said, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. By cultivating your inner world, you no longer rely on anyone else for validation or belonging. Final thought. Every ghosted text, every unanswered call is an opportunity to reclaim your power, strengthen your mind, and become the person you were always meant to be. Growth doesn't come from comfort, it comes from challenges. Ghosting is simply a Stoic exercise in emotional mastery. Being ghosted is painful, confusing, and often feels deeply personal. But the reality is clear, it is rarely about you. It's about the other person's fears, insecurities, and inability to face discomfort. Ghosting reveals more about their character than it ever will about your worth. The Stoics teach us that our power lies not in controlling others, but in mastering our own minds. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. When you internalize this wisdom, ghosting loses its sting. Silence no longer threatens your self-esteem, and absence no longer shakes your confidence. Each experience becomes a lesson, a mirror, and a step toward emotional resilience. Here's what to remember. Ghosting is not rejection of you. It's a reflection of them. Recognize the patterns and signs, and protect your energy before it's wasted. Reframe the pain into growth, self-awareness, and empowerment. Focus on building relationships with people who communicate, respect, and value you. If this video helped you see ghosting differently, share it with someone who needs this perspective. And if you want more insights on mastering your mind, relationships, and emotional resilience, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Because understanding human behavior is the first step toward living an unbreakable life. Remember, the ultimate freedom doesn't come from others. It comes from your mind, your choices, and your inner strength.